Hi everyone, I'm Mottola, and I am the author of this series of books called Wonders in the Garden.
And I am her sister Maria Mottola, and I drew the pictures.
And this is a series of 3 books. One is called What Grows in the Garden, the other is What Lives in the Garden, and the third is called What Do You Sense in the Garden. I got started here at NYBG through my boss, Toby Adams. My daughter Hannah was in the program here, the children's gardening program. And I would drop her off at the Mottola gate, and she would get on the tram and come here for 2.5 hours. And while she was doing that, I was wandering around the garden or running around the garden and just exploring. And one of the days when I went to pick her up, Toby came over and he said, I understand that you work in schools with children, and are you interested in coming and helping us out at the family garden, because I have a space that I need to fill. And I said, I'd love that. And that's how it all started. So that was almost 10 years ago now. So as part of teaching here at the family garden, as well as the other schools where I teach, I have to write lessons. And I would prepare my lesson, and again, as a teacher, I like to have a story or a book to coincide with what I'm teaching the children. And so I'd go to the library or search online and try to find the just right book. There's a lesson that I do that turned into this book, or that was part of this book, What Grows in the Garden, about plant parts. And so I couldn't find a book that talked specifically about that, so I created one. And it was all done by hand with just hand drawings that my daughter and I colored in. And I'd be reading these books to the children, and I had teachers saying to me, you should do something with these books. And then what really happened was I met with a friend for lunch and was telling him my story, and he had just finished publishing some books himself. And he said, you work at the Botanical Garden, why don't you propose this to them? And that's how this took off from there. So Mia and I have always had this unique and very awesome connection as sisters. And for me, as I said, when I tell the story to children of how I'm doing this with my big sister, there's a warmth in my...
Older.
Well, you are older, but there's always this warm feeling about how cool that is that I'm doing this with my big sister. And but there were moments where, because I'm more familiar with, like for example, in the one book, What Grows in the Garden, we have these small boxes where the children can see the progression of growth. And so there was one moment where, and I always tried hard because I knew that the time Mia was putting in to do these drawings was a lot more than the time I put in to do the writing. And so I always felt like this hesitancy to say, can you just tweak this one a little bit? But there was one that I had shared it with folks here at the garden, and they all agreed, no, she's going to have to fix this one. And it was for kohlrabi. It's a stem, and
Which
it
I'm
grows
looking at right there.
Right.
It's so funny.
Right. That's kohlrabi.
And that's a good example of what you were talking about.
Right. So most people think it's like in the same family as radishes or beets, and it grows under the ground, but it actually is a stem that sits on top of the soil. So in her sketch, she had put it underneath. So I was like, can you just shift it to the top of that? And
Right.
she did, and it was great.
A learning curve for me was actually paying more attention to the difference between how certain vegetables looked, and especially when I made the decision to make the children small and live in this world of giant things. It meant that I had to pay close attention to what's the difference between the leaf of Swiss chard versus kale, the top of a carrot versus the top of a radish. So that was fun. These are not books that are meant to explain everything, but they're books that will get a young kid interested enough to begin to ask questions about, oh, how does this grow? Or why does it look like this? Or why is that purple?
There's many more things than are what are in these books that are growing in the garden. So it's sort of a way to elicit that response from the children. Oh, I also see string beans growing in the garden. We don't mention string beans in the book. I see nasturtium growing in the garden.
Botanical Garden Press does such amazing publishing of books that are for adult gardeners, right? Or people who are interested in botany, or so it's exciting to me, the idea that even at the earliest ages, the Botanical Gardens is building fans of its work and its mission, through things that appeal to them directly.
And also just that they took that leap of faith and decided to take on a children's book series, having never done that before. I remember when that realization came to play,
right.
I was like, wow, that's really neat that this is the first time they're doing this. And I just showed Mia, we stopped in the Watson building on the way in, and in one of the display cases, there's a stack of the books that NYBG Press has published, and they're all these scientific looking textbooks, and then ours sits right on top. And that's very exciting.
Yeah, and I think there's potential for the illustrations to be used in ways that promote the family garden. So I just feel like there's lots more to come.
You know, Maria and I talk about this a lot. Like, we did not do this with the expectation that we were going to walk away with $1 million and make a ton of money. However, you know, the idea that we can put this feather in our cap and say that we are published authors and illustrators is really great.